Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Welcome to this third evening of reflection on the Quran with your brothers and sisters at Cage. We'll be exploring the third Jews through three key stories, key highlights of these Jews, inshallah. And you will realize that these three passages, there's one theme that ties them together, which is the theme of truth. And we'll go straight into it. One of the reasons why this Jews is so blessed is that it contains the greatest ayah of the Quran, which is Ayatul Kursi, which most of us would know and recite frequently. This is an ayah of Shifa, an ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals some of his names and attributes. That's an ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala displays and mentions his sovereignty, his knowledge, his might, his glory, his majesty, his power. He mentions how he's different from his creation. So how is it linked to truth? Is that simply this ayah is a manifestation of the greatest truth, which is who Allah is, the reality of Allah, trying to understand his might and glory. This is in the life of any human being, indeed the manifestation of the greatest truth. Another way which links this ayah to the theme of truth is the story which we know from the authentic Sunnah, from which we got to know some of the virtues of this verse. One companion, would mention that he went to the Prophet ﷺ mentioning that for several nights, someone or something would come and steal from him, and each night he would let go until up until one night where he decided not to let him go. So the thief told him, "Let me go, and I will teach you something that will benefit you greatly, something about your Lord." So he told him about this Ayatul Kursi, and that if you recite this ayah before going to bed, before going to sleep, then God, an angel will be appointed to you, and no shaitan will be able to touch you or to harm you. So the companion went to the Prophet ﷺ and he told him the story, and he said, this person is a liar, but he said the truth. So the Prophet ﷺ confirmed that the blessings and the virtue mentioned by this person was actually real. And he asked the companion, to say, "Do you know who that person was?" He said, "This was Shaitan." And the response of the Prophet ﷺ is very, very interesting. Is that he said, "This person is a liar, but he said the truth." So the status of the person is the same, still a liar. But when it comes to the truth, the Muslim, the believer, accepts it. He accepts it. He accepts the truth, wherever it comes from. Number two is the attitude of the companion. Upon hearing this story or this virtue of Ayatul Kursi, he didn't just run with it and started to repeat it to everyone. He went to the Prophet ﷺ and he confirmed it. So this is exactly what our attitude needs to be. Number one, we need to verify and ensure that what we hear is in line with the revelation. That's what the companion did. By asking the Prophet, he ensured that this was actually in line with the revelation. And number two, when this is established, then we need to accept it. The second story is a fascinating story, and that's the meeting between Ibrahim alayhi and the king. And again, you will see how it's linked to the truth. This passage starts with a very, very interesting verse or question from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where he says, "Have you not seen the case of the one who argued with Ibrahim about his Lord merely because Allah had given him power and kingship?" So in other words, this king is not arguing because he knows the truth or because he wants to know the truth. He's simply arguing because he has power. But who has given him this power? It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's a first key lesson, is that power, when it's in the hands of those who do not appreciate the grace of Allah, it will it will lead to corruption. And Allah might have given them power, but it did not empower them to oppress people that are under their authority. If we go straight into the conversation between Ibrahim alayhi salam and the king, Ibrahim, he says, my Lord is the one who gives life and the one that gives death. And the king, so Ibrahim alayhi salam brings a very reasonable argument. You would expect a reasonable conversation. Instead, the king comes with a response which is foolish and shows his arrogance. Say, I give life and give death as well. So he equates himself or his power to the power of Allah. And on top of it, he knows, it's not what Ibrahim alayhi salam meant. It did not mean that I can kill someone or spare life. But what's very interesting is Ibrahim alayhi salam, he does not entertain the king and trying to explain, oh, that's not what I meant. Instead, what Ibrahim does, alayhi salam, is that he takes the conversation to a completely different sphere, and he brings an argument that finishes off the argument or the conversation. He said that Allah brings up the sun from the east, bring it from the west, and the king is left completely astonished. But what's very, very interesting is that the very last portion of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Wallahu la yahdi al-qawm al-zalimin, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not guide a people who is oppressor. Okay? If we compare to the previous story that we just mentioned of Ayatul Kursi, the companion, because of his approach to the truth, he was left with a great benefit, which is the knowledge of the virtues and blessings of Ayatul Kursi. The king, because of his arrogance and his oppression, is left with nothing. Allah leaves him with nothing, no guidance and no blessing. So this is the difference between the humble seeker of truth, who is guided by Allah, and the arrogant denier, who ends up left to his own device by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And lastly, a key highlight of this juz, number 3, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encourages us a lot to give in the way of Allah. He gives a lot. There's so many verses in this juz about giving in the way of Allah. In this verse, or among those verses, there's a very, very, again, link to the truth. Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that ash-shaytanu ya'idukum al-faqr. The shaitan promises you poverty, and he incites you to commit evil, to commit fahisha. But Allah promises you His forgiveness and His bounty. So again, this is truth versus falsehood. We've got a false promise of shaitan that tells you that by giving you'll be poor. On the opposite, you've got the truthful promise of Allah, which leads to His forgiveness and His bounty, the blessings of Allah in this life and the hereafter. Among the many, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains how He multiplies the rewards when someone gives. And there's an ethic of giving. If you read all those verses, there's an ethic. We can go through some of them, inshallah. One of them is that give from what you love. Do not give from the things that you do not love. That's number one. Not in any order. This verse that's coming is actually mentioning some other of these ethics that are necessary for your charities to be accepted. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "O you who believe, do not invalidate your charities with reminders or injury, as does one who spends his wealth only to be seen by the people and does not believe in Allah and the last day." So again, charity is linked to truthfulness. How? If we know that giving has to be done sincerely for the sake of Allah. It cannot be done pure. It cannot be done to be seen by others. Therefore, we need to be truthful in our intention to Allah. This is so our intention can nullify or cancel our charity, but our actions can also cancel our charity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, do not invalidate your charity with reminders. If you remind others of your charity, of your good deeds, this will cancel them. Or injury, causing harm to others, this will nullify and cancel your good deeds or your charity. Some of the benefits of charity that are mentioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this juz is that, number one, it will remove some of your bad deeds. Number two, they will have their reward with their Lord, and no fear will be their concern, and they will not grieve. So there's a great rewards in this life and the hereafter. There is financial reward in this life. There is spiritual and psychological reward in this life, and in the hereafter is the greatest of all rewards, which is Allah's paradise. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all Jannah. May Allah forgive us. May Allah accept your good deeds, your qiyam, your siyam, your reading of the Quran. And as we mentioned, the greatness of giving in the way of Allah, then I will urge you to give to the cause of Cage, to supporting justice, to revive justice. And I remind you of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which says that the just will be sitting on pulpits of light. So may Allah bless you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuhu.